as it is, and this will further jeopardize access for our students. And even before the executive order was signed yesterday, the harm was already happening. Funding for districts to buy food from local farmers so that students could have healthy, locally sourced meals was cut. That was $12 million for Massachusetts schools through the USDA to buy local, wholesome food directly from local farms. And it's a great program that provides kids with healthy meals and supports our local farmers. And over 13,000 public servants in the Department of Education were already illegally fired and laid off, including those working in the Office of Civil Rights, protecting and ensuring our most vulnerable students, including students with disabilities, get equitable access to education. Even grants in higher education, ones that were addressing our teacher shortages with pipeline programs into teaching, were illegally cut. But in Massachusetts, we will use every tool to fight back, and we're proud that our Attorney General successfully sued over the cancellation of the latter grant. However, we know that this is an inflection point and just the start of a long fight ahead, and it doesn't end with public education and their plans to decimate the ability to provide all children with public education that serves their needs and abilities. What we're facing is not just about the gutting of the Department of Education, which the president does not have the authority to shutter. It's also about cutting Medicaid, stripping healthcare from our most vulnerable. Medicaid is actually a critical resource for our public schools, providing funding to pay for essential services like speech therapy, occupational therapy, skilled nursing, mental health, and even dental screenings. In fiscal year 24, that was $81 million in reimbursements for our public schools across the state. It's also about cutting research funding, ending jobs that working families rely on to put food on their table, but jobs that also mean life or death for those benefiting from the research they are working on. And these cuts are all intertwined. It bleeds into every part of our life for many of our working families. And so every child and every school in the nation will be impacted by Trump's education agenda, but it will hit our most vulnerable students the hardest. Students with disabilities, students from low-income families, English and multilingual learners, kids from rural communities, and the same kids living in the households that will also be impacted by all the other cuts to our federal government. And he's not just targeting those most in need, he's forcing them to shoulder the burden in a crippling way, targeting everything from housing, healthcare, employment, and access to food. But that's why we're standing up across the country, because it's not just an attack on education, it's an attack on everyone. A true democracy also does not seek to limit access to knowledge, history, and our books, and a true democracy provides opportunities for everyone, not just some at the benefit, or not the expense of children and those who have the least to benefit those who already have more than what they need. It is simply an abuse of power, and it goes against the core of our democracy. Our fight, of course, is not just in Massachusetts alone, and that is why it is also an honor and privilege to be here today with President Randi Weingarten, who is our International Union President representing 1.8 million workers, teachers, paraprofessionals, school-related personnel, higher ed faculty, staff, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, local and state federal government employees, and early childhood educators. At the AFT, we are dedicated to the belief that every person in America deserves the freedom to thrive, fueled by opportunity, justice, and a voice in our democracy, and she has been on the front lines of the fights for those values and beliefs. So I'm going to turn it over now to President Weingarten.
Thank you, President Tang, and thank you, Representative Clark. And I am honored to be with you today. I am sorry that I am in a car racing from place to place as we do this, but I wanted to be with you because what is going on right now is a travesty for the future of our country and the future of our kids. Massachusetts, there's lots of states and territories in the country. Massachusetts has, by and large, been a shining star in terms of education. And a lot of that is because of the work that Representative Clark has done, both in the state and in the Congress. A lot of that is because of the work that Jessica Tang has done. A lot of that is because of the work that our sisters and brothers and other siblings in NEA have done, the teachers in Massachusetts have done, the people in power in Massachusetts have done to invest in the schools that our kids deserve. And so Massachusetts has done a lot of work as a state to control its education system and to make it the best it can be. What the federal government does, what the Department of Education does, is that it is about opportunity, fill the opportunity gaps to level the playing field that we have seen in other types when we don't have it. And so that is what Donald Trump just cut yesterday. That is what they did when they say dismantle the Department of Education. It is taking away, as Jessica talked about, the kinds of things that create that kind of opportunity. So at the end of the day, we are fighting it because we are fighting to ensure that all kids have the opportunity to thrive, that all kids are in a safe and welcoming environment every single day, and that all kids end up having what they need to ensure that they have relevant, engaging curriculum. And what does that mean in terms of dollars and cents? Just take Massachusetts for a second. Title I, 26 million kids nationally get Title I. What does it mean if Title I goes to pay for tax cuts for Elon Musk? What does it mean? $297 million to Massachusetts. What does that mean per child? $5,400 per child. How is Massachusetts going to find that? How are working people going to find that? Why would you take away a reading specialist, a summer school program, an after school program for kids who are vulnerable? Why would you do that to give Elon Musk a tax cut? That's what we're talking about here. And the last thing I'll say is this. As a nation that believes in a future, how is it that one of the first things that this new president does is to say they are abandoning the federal role in education? They are cutting research grants for schools and universities that end up getting research grants to try to cure cancer. They are attacking libraries. They are attacking universities. Why, in a nation that believes in our future, would we curtail and abandon the federal role in helping kids learn, in helping create a generation of scholars and scientists and engineers and the next president of the United States? Why would one do that? No president, Republican or Democrat, has ever taken a hatchet to educational opportunity in the way that this one has. And that is why we are fighting for our future and to protect our children. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you so much, President Weingarten, and thank you for all you're doing on the front lines. And leading the fight in Congress is Democratic Whip Katherine Clark, our very own Congresswoman from Massachusetts representing the 5th District. And she knows both what we are facing here in Massachusetts, but also all across the nation. And she brings the perspective not just as a legislator, but also that of a former school board member from her work in the Massachusetts Office of Child Care Services and as a policy chief for the Mass Attorney General. And so thank you so much, Representative Clark, for being here this morning, too.
Oh, thank you, President Tang and President Weingarten. It is a pleasure to be here with you. And to every AFT member across our Commonwealth, thank you for leading the fight, because we know now is the time for solidarity. Now is the time to stand together and stand strong. Teachers and parents, neighbors and classmates, we are in this together. We have to be, because we are so far past normal politics. This is an all-out war on the working class. They have declared war on our healthcare, on housing, on Social Security, on hungry families, on our veterans, and now they have declared war on our children. It has been laid out this morning, and it is clear. Trump is defunding our public schools. He's firing teachers, abandoning students, ballooning class sizes, gutting special education and libraries and Pell Grants. This is stealing from the 90% of kids in our country who go to public school. And it is stealing the future of our country. Parents are in a panic. And just as he's dragging us into a recession, what is this all for? It's so a wealthy few can pocket money they don't need and won't notice. And my question is, where are my Republican colleagues? Where's the party that campaigned on a promise to fight for working families, that promised affordability, prosperity, and opportunity? They are falling in line with this corrupt agenda. And they're doing exactly what they're told to do instead of doing what's right. Because billionaires bankroll their campaigns and they expect a return on investment. That's the promise, not the promise to our kids and families that matters the most to the House GOP. And so we are going to stand together and fight back. We're going to take this fight to the House floor. We're going to take it to the courts, and we will take it to our communities and the streets. We will not let Republicans walk away from their promises. We will not let them get away with turning on their own constituents. And they certainly can't hide from the parents of this country. We know the stakes here. We know we're up against some powerful people, but there's a lot more of us. The American people are on our side. The truth is on our side. And the truth that education is not a privilege of the few. It is a birthright of every child, of every background, in every part of this country. That's what we're fighting for, and we will keep it up. And I'm so glad to be in partnership with AFT and the people across the country that understand we will not be a strong democracy without strong public schools.
Thank you so much, Representative Clark. I'm going to pass it over to Emily to take questions, but I'll just summarize by saying this executive order really does go against the core of our democracy, which is one of our most basic values as a nation. This idea that every child should have opportunity to succeed. And so we are here again to say that we will not back down from this fight to protect our nation's future, and we will double down on protecting what government is supposed to be about, which is making lives for working people better for everyone, beginning with equitable access to education and knowledge for our children. So Emily, turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you. If there are any questions from reporters, please raise your virtual hand and we will call on you. Okay. Mark Grunberg. And Mark, if you could just let us know what outlet you're with.
Yes, thank you. I'm with Press Associates Union News Service, but this is a broader question. In so many words, do the Republicans even share the assumption that we should be a democracy? Do they want a theocracy or an autocracy or a dictatorship or a what? We've got a civics teacher on here. We've got a social studies teacher on here. We've got someone who served on a school board on here. Take a shot at that.
I mean, I can start just saying, I taught social studies and civics, and what's happening in our government right now flies against everything that I've ever taught about how democracy is supposed to work. And so again, yes, this is about dismantling public education, but I'm very concerned this is actually much more than that. This is about backsliding of democracy, and the things that are happening are things that happen in authoritarian governments. As historians, we know this, we see this.
Randy?
So, Mark, for those who don't, I taught civics and AP Gov at Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm actually still on leave from my teaching position. Always kind of wanting to go back to it.
Right.
But what's happening is there's three things that are going on that, and Representative Clark said it and Jess said it, but when you combine the deprivation agenda that's going on right now in terms of the Republicans taking away food, taking away farmer subsidies, all of, tariffs. There are some tariffs that are important and targeted, but basically creating this kind of uncertainty in terms of the economy, hurting the same working people that you said you were going to help, in order to help the rich who, as Representative Clark said, don't need it. So you're creating a deprivation agenda in order to help people who just keep you in power, and then at the same exact time, attack knowledge in all these different kinds of ways. That is the authoritarian agenda. That is what we've seen in the past. That's what's going on in terms of Hungary. So I think you know the answer to that. The question for us is, what do we do about it? And how do we make sure that, that the working people who we all, have been elected in different ways to represent, and the students that we are charged have responsibility to educate, how do we fight for them, and how do we create the contrast? And that's what we're doing.
Representative Clark, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that Jessica and Randy have said, and I appreciate from the teacher perspective, but from the lawyer perspective, we know this is a full-on attack on fundamental civil rights, on what makes our democracy. It is certainly an attack on the Constitution and the framework and the rule of law that we operate under. But there is nothing more democratic than the concept that every child can show up wherever they live and attend a public school that can give them the opportunity to be what they want to be, give them the skills and the learning, allow them to enjoy art and music and sports, all those things that are so important to educating our children, educating a people. And so this executive order, they're even admitting is illegal and unconstitutional, but proceeding with it anyhow. Just really, there are so many things they are attacking: the First Amendment, due process, but this one really goes at the heart of it and is saying to families who are having a hard time making ends meet and feel like they just can't get ahead, and that certainly survival is the new winning, not success, that we see you and we are deciding to take the rug right out from under you, to make sure that we are taking away everything that helps you provide for your family, whether that's a job that pays well and has paid leave, whether that's the ability to access healthcare. And now we're saying we don't think your children have the right to go to a good, strong public school. And it's based on so much misinformation. As Jessica pointed out, already state and local governments are the ones that set the curriculum, that purchase books for our libraries and schools, that make decisions around what textbooks to use. And there's a tell here, as there's been with so many things that this administration has done. They start by firing inspector generals, by firing the lawyers who are there to make sure that rules are applied fairly and that we uphold the law. And in this case, the first thing they did was cut the Institute of Educational Science that measures student achievement, so that we have no way to look back and say, what are the impact on unraveling this department on students and families? So they are telling us every single day. And while they're saying they won't touch Title I, that things will be okay, that we're being alarmist, they have written it down in their handbook in Project 2025, that elimination of Title I is the goal. So we're going to meet this moment with the same force that they are, and make sure that families across this country who are working hard and may have put their trust and vote for this administration, the level of betrayal that this administration is showing towards them.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you, Mark, for the question. I know I saw Emily Piper's hand up. It did go down. Emily, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, yes. Hi, I'm
Okay.
Emily Piper Valillo from WBUR. I'm curious, like, what are some specific impacts this might have on students with disabilities in Massachusetts, and if there are any ways that the state or state leaders are planning to mitigate these impacts.
Sure. So I can tell you there are so many positions specifically funded both by Title I and IDEA that provide special education services to students. And so if that funding is jeopardized in any way, it literally means for example, the reading specialists in the Chelsea Public Schools are all funded by IDEA and Title I. They would be gone. So there are immediate impacts in terms of being able to provide services for special education students. And again, we don't have enough special education teachers right now as it is. And so it's exacerbating the problem of being able to provide the services our special education students are entitled to through their IEPs. And so there absolutely will be impacts. And the other part, again, is the enforcement, right? So even if we did have the funding, there's a reason why the departments of education exist to ensure that the funding is actually going where it's supposed to go to help the students that it was intended to help. And block grants would eviscerate that oversight.
Representative Clark or President Weingarten, is there anything you wanted to add before we?
I would just add that, maybe any one of these particular attacks on funding that comes into Massachusetts could be handled and we would adapt. And I know Massachusetts is solutions oriented and they are going to do the best they can, but no state can take a loss of federal education funding, a loss of Medicaid and Medicare funding, a loss of veterans benefits support, a loss of the programs that feed hungry kids and families in this state. That cumulative effect will sink any state budget. And so what we're looking at, as President Tang laid out, these are so intertwined. And the really diabolical part of that is that is well understood by this administration, and it is part of the agenda to pull the whole system down in order to continue to shift wealth to those who have so much already in this country. That is the plot. This is a new page in the agenda, but it is all intertwined and connected. And really, will take any state, even one as Massachusetts is nimble and flexible and will do everything it can to fill those holes. It just is going to be, it is too much when you have all of these different attacks on federal funding and partnership coming together at once.
And I'll just add one thing too, which is that we are in conversations, obviously, with our state government leader, our governor, our secretary of education, about the realities that we may be facing. But I also found it extremely ironic that in the executive order, one justification was NAEP scores. Well, in Massachusetts, we've always had the highest NAEP scores. And you would think that, okay, well, if we're number one and we've been number one consistently in all of our sectors, whether it's, public schools, private schools, or charter schools, you'd have something to learn from here. But what they're doing is literally the exact opposite of what we've been doing in Massachusetts to be able to have the success that we've had. Although, of course, we do have gaps that we need to close and more to do. But being able to do that more is going to be jeopardized even further.
Representative Clark said it. It's erasing the 21st century. It's basically taking, that in the post-World War II era, there was a recognition in America that we needed to do everything we could to ensure that everybody had a right to learn, had a right to live. And basically that working people, particularly all those veterans, all those people who had fought for democracy, starting with the GI Bill, that we would actually make a contract with Americans that we would lift them up. And all of this together is basically taking that away for the benefit of some of the rich. And so regardless, I think that Representative Clark and Jessica actually put together what the effect would be in every state. Take red states. Mississippi, 20% of their funding comes from the federal government for education. So every state is going to have an existential threat to families and to kids if this federal funding goes bye-bye, and if there's the evisceration of the Department of Education, as well as the other Medicaid, Social Security.
Okay. I don't see any other hands raised, so I think we will call it a day. Thank you all. And if any reporters have any follow-ups, you know how to reach me. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Recording stopped.